You're on the road beyond. I'm Todd Duplantis. Welcome to you all joining us this evening. We've got a great show lined up for you. First off, big news out of D.C. over the last week. Of course, last week, word leaked out on a Supreme Court draft majority opinion that would, in essence, overturn the landmark Roe versus Wade abortion rights case. Chief Justice John Roberts later said in a statement that the draft opinion, quote, does not represent a decision by the court or the final position of any member on the issues in the case, but that doesn't mean the same decision has been made. Nonetheless, protests erupted throughout the Capitol and literally across the nation, including in front of the homes of many of the majority Supreme Court justices, an action that has yet to be condemned by the White House. Now, in fact, over the last 24 hours, it's been reported that Justice Samuel Alito has been moved to an undisclosed location for safety concerns. Scotty, a lot to unpack this evening. Of course, welcome to the show. Welcome on the air tonight. First off, this leak itself, we got to talk about what it's all about and what it was intended to be about, because it seems to me that looking to sway possibly midterms. Well,
yeah, Todd, we need to talk about the elephant in the womb here. There's talk about eliminating the filibuster.
Right.
So that Roe versus Wade can be protected by a simple majority vote before the midterm. There's also strong talk about expanding that simple majority number of Supreme Court justices to 13. That would give Biden a shot at appointing 3 more liberal justices.
You know, we have to see what would happen. Of course, a lot of this is still speculation at this point. Of course, what's unheard of is something like this leaking out. Scotty, can you recall over your career in news of something like this leaking of this magnitude?
Not from the Supreme Court. You've got Ted Cruz saying, you know, we're going to get this person who leaked this.
Yeah.
Going to be one of those liberals. What if it's Alito's people?
Yeah, I've heard it on both sides of the aisle. I'm saying it could be on one side, you know, on a conservative side, or of course, the liberal side. We'll have to wait and see. Still very early in this, and I'm sure this summer will be very telling. Buckle up, folks. It's going to be at least an interesting summer. Okay, more news about Elon Musk and the acquisition of Twitter. This guy's in the news every day. He tweets more than any human right now. This guy's tweeting like crazy. Free speech comes at a price, especially those working for the platform. They're considering now, the deal has yet to officially been finalized, but from what I'm reading and seeing on Twitter, they're continuing to actively censor, or maybe as they put it, protect us from ourselves. I'm imagining, Scotty, that Musk is looking to install a new culture. And for him to do that, he has to literally tear it down and rebuild. And that's what he seems to be doing. He's naming himself as the interim CEO, and it looks like he's going to be making some major changes.
There are media reports, Todd, that Musk plans to cut staff dramatically, warning those who remain will have to work darn hard. Yeah. Also, he plans to drop the volume of advertising on the platform, which would be a welcome move. And of course, be offset by the less of expensive people. But another business Elon Musk has pioneered is Starlink. This is important. 2,000 satellites in that network for internet and communications. And there are reports that the Russians are not pleased with Musk because he has specially tasked these satellites over Ukraine and Russia in order to keep the communications lines open over this war-torn region. In fact, Musk says they have taken special action to defend their satellites against Russian attack.
Yeah.
Jamming. The head of the Russian Space Agency has personally attacked Musk for providing internet over Ukraine against Russian interference, and it is working. That's the only way people are getting on the internet is through Elon Musk's satellites. And he's being threatened. The threat is real. With Russians calling this a war. If Russians do call it a war, it's a 15-year sentence in a gulag in Siberia. But Elon Musk is apparently undeterring, saying, and this is a quote, if I die under mysterious circumstances, it's been nice knowing you.
Yeah, it is scary for him right now, but a lot of things happening, and we'll just have to see how that plays out as well.
If I was Elon Musk, I'd check my underwear.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, I think he's beyond worrying at this point. But Scotty, this is a perfect transition for our main event on the road beyond tonight: cyberspace warfare, cybersecurity. We're going to be breaking it all down. You know, it was just a little over a year ago that there was a cybersecurity attack left on a large portion of our nation, left them reeling. With the price of gas so high now that most of us have forgotten it, there was a panic from Texas to New York. It was a highway to hell, if you remember that. Russian hackers installed ransomware on the billing operating system controlling the Colonial Pipeline. Now, that's a main pipeline, kind of like a main artery from Houston out to the East Coast. As we all learned with great consternation, this is the pipeline that transports gasoline and jet fuel from Houston refineries up through the Northeast. 19 states went into a panic. You may remember that from last summer. 40% of that much needed supply was cut off, and it caused problems everywhere. In fact, one governor was warning citizens that when they did find a working pump, don't put your gas or store it in plastic containers or plastic bags. Yeah, that was happening. He wanted them to use approved gasoline cans. It literally got that bad. Now this gas squeeze has gotten so bad, we'll all be asking how much will I be Putin in my gas tank? Maybe so, but as a scholar of Russian cyber operations points out, Russia benefits politically from the chaos of higher and higher prices. In the past, foreign hackers worked directly with or with Russian approval are more interested in money from ransom than actual attacks. But this could change. Russia has been accused by the West of turning a blind eye to hackers targeting companies all over the world. Now, Scotty, we highlight one of these identified hackers.
Okay, it is the FBI's contention that this man, Yevgeny Polanin, indicted Russian hacker. Yevgeny Polanin, one of the FBI's most wanted men linked to ransomware and the gang ReEvil and DarkSide that attacked the Colonial Pipeline. Here's another picture of him holding a microprocessor, the new equivalent of the Russian ICBM in the cyberspace world of warfare. He clandestinely was captured with pictures of him. Yeah, he's living freely in Siberia, in a city there with no sign of Russian authorities are acting to detain him. The Daily Mail tracked him down here in Siberia. Yevgeny Polanin was captured by Daily Mail cameras getting into this $74,000 Toyota SUV, although wanted by the
fine
FBI.
Riding vehicle there.
And he's got the money for it, apparently. The FBI had been involved, he'd been involved in ReEvil and DarkSide, the group of hackers who engineered the Colonial Pipeline cyber attack. And are you thinking that Vladimir Putin and his GRU, Russia's largest intelligence gathering force, don't know where he is? They know where he is. He's here, living a life of luxury in this large metal gated mansion. Yeah, it's palatial inside. This 20-year-old something, he's got money. The FBI says he's responsible for ransomware attacks around the world. The United States Justice Department indicted him and seized $6.1 million in money from his accounts directly connected to ransomware and other money laundering illegal cyberspace activities.
A lot going on with there, Scotty. Now, right after the attacks last May against the Colonial Pipeline, Putin made a point of announcing his people had arrested all of the bad actors and shut down DarkSide and ReEvil. President Biden even praised them at the time, the Russians that is, and Putin, for taking swift action. But that
yeah. The operations were shut down. They did retrieve $2.3 million, a large percentage of the millions of dollars in Bitcoin paid for ransom. And it is important to note and to point out this one fact. The hackers did not affect the actual operation software of the pipeline, but their billing operations and inter-office systems. It was out of an abundance of caution that Colonial shut down the pipeline for fear that operational computer systems would be affected next if they didn't pay. It's always a chess game with these Russian hackers. You pay now because you see what we have done.
That's right. But getting back to our guy in Siberia, isn't it the allegations he's been involved in a dozen of these ransom attacks around the world?
Oh, yes. And he's now living in Siberia free with no hint of Russian authority after him. No extradition from Russia, as we know. Why is he so apparently wealthy and connected? Even after the Justice Department seized more than $6.1 million a decade ago?
Well, he's got a young wife and he has a business on the line. They look like an innocent and happy couple, as you can see right here.
Oh, yes. Sophia's business is an online bakery producing naughty-looking delicacies we can't show you.
Right, exactly.
Oh, I hope we don't. I know we won't blur them. It's not worth it. But it is a salacious business, and they have this as a result. This is the chopper he and his wife are said to use to take frequent sightseeing expeditions all over the mountains of Siberia.
But of course, Scotty, we must mention there is no visible evidence that he and his wife work directly for Putin.
I think the fact that he is free says it all. We do know of 4 Russian government employees who have been indicted by the FBI for cyberspace attacks. These 4 guys have been tagged directly by our Justice Department. They stand accused of a long list of cyberspace malfeasance here in the United States and 135 other countries as part of the GRU's cyberspace war campaign. It's important to note that this guy on the far right, he's a Putin employee. He's responsible in the indictment of engineering a breach at the Kansas-based Wolf Creek nuclear power plant. Look at this. This plant is massive in Burlington, Kansas. And you can see it sits on 10,000 acres on the Wolf Creek Lake. It produces 10,000 gigawatts of energy. It cost $5 million to build. Now, this Russian hack did not target the plant's operating system, but like Colonial Pipeline, only to breach the office computer system of Wolf Nuclear Operating Corporation. And the hack was in 2017. The indictments flowed in 2021. Took a long time, but they did it. Back in 2012, the plant suffered an unknown glitch. Power system put the plant offline for 3 hours. Was this the result of hacking by the Russians? A test case, government or not. The problem is that Russian government is actively protecting these hackers living within its border, including suspects wanted by Western law enforcement and intelligence agencies. U.S. authorities have arrested more than a dozen Russian hackers in various countries over the last several years, prompting Moscow to accuse the United States of hunting Russian citizens around the world, a charge that Washington, of course, denies. Russia has refused to support investigations or extraditions in such cases, either protect its citizens from what it claims is unjust U.S. prosecution, or out of fear that such processes will reveal Russian state involvement in their crimes. We do have testimony from this guy, a private Russian hacker. Now, this is Nikita Kislitsin, and he has cooperated with the FBI, and he has told them under interview and under oath that the FSB, what is the FBI for Russia, the domestic Russian security service, he has provided information and done tasks for the FSB.
And Scotty, that brings us to tonight's guest, cyberspace security guru, Mitchell Keller. Mitch was part of the JP Morgan Chase networking security team here in Houston. Now he's teaching his craft to college students as an expert. And Mitch joins us tonight. Good evening to you, Mitch. How are you?
Great. Thank you for having me on, Scott. I'll be happy to discuss cybersecurity on a broad scope with you.
Yeah, before we get to that, we've detailed possible Russian connections with hackers, known hackers, and we've seen what happened at the Colonial Pipeline. I guess the first question I have for you, can this happen on a larger scale where it's going to affect the whole nation? I mean, is this our future, what we're looking towards?
So cyber security is an ongoing process. There are systems which are already compromised on a large scale. Whether Russia decides to pull the button, as it were, is anyone's guess. There are patches, remediation, ongoing operations to work on fixing these different issues, known issues. But it comes down to a fundamental component with computers and how they communicate. So there has to be a broader change to that to fix a lot of these issues.
And is that some? Go ahead, Scotty.
So what you're saying to me, Mitch, is these guys aren't lone actors. They can't do all this stuff that they do successfully without Russian government support.
Absolutely not. It is not a lone person. They do not have the resources available to target these massive different systems. Some of them are isolated systems which you need to be very close proximity in order to gain access. So yes, there are other actors that they are working with.
And so this is basically what you're saying is this is a very sophisticated terror organization, cyberspace terror organization with people on the ground here in the United States or other countries helping the actors do their deeds.
Correct. There have been many Russian bad faith actors exposed within the government over many years. And there are many more that we do not know about. But it is very obvious, even with the pipeline, which you mentioned earlier in the segment, that they are here working in bad faith.
So, Mitch, I want to ask you, because obviously with Colonial Pipeline, some money was paid for ransom. I remember a few years ago, I wear a Garmin on a daily basis for running and tracking my activity. And I'm not sure if you recall this, but about 2 years ago, Garmin's system went offline for the better part of a couple of weeks. You could store your data, but you couldn't put it online. You couldn't access data that was stored in the cloud. And eventually it came out that they were a victim of, ransomware. And I'm not sure if they paid it or not, but what is the general rule of thumb with companies? Are companies going to start producing Bitcoin and paying these hackers, or are they just going to hold firm and try to fight it themselves?
They already are. They are paying the ransomwares, especially within the healthcare systems. When they go and lock down records or expose that they have access to these records, they go and pay these ransomwares. They just pay them.
So it's a common practice now.
It's a very common practice. It is happening across all different industries, all factors of our everyday life, any industry you can think of, they have been targeted by ransomware, and a vast majority of them have paid. There's no other real way to decrypt and get back this information, so they look at it as a cost of business. When I worked in the financial sector, we called it risk management, and about 5 to 10% of any budget would be go towards this risk. And whether there was a vulnerability or something would happen, this percent of the project would be used to pay to cover any liability, cover up, and et cetera, et cetera.
My question here now, Mitch, with the shrinking Russian GDP, the rubles in the toilet, how much of their financial consideration, how much do they depend on this kind of ransomware? And are these hackers flipping the money back to Putin?
So I would say yes, they are putting money back into Putin's pocket. I can give you a couple of statistics. At the start of the war, the ruble was at 0.012 per US dollar to a low of 0.007. So it lost about half of its value. Now, in the last 2 weeks, the ruble has surged and gone up to 0.015. And it is astounding that that has happened since there are sanctions in place. Most would point to Europe is still buying oil and energy, and maybe China's picking up the slack, but that doesn't really make fundamental sense of why a country would be paying more for the commodities which they are already receiving. So what I want to do tell you is that over $6 trillion has been a direct cause of loss from the year 2021 due to ransomware cybersecurity attacks. Russia's GDP last year was $1.5 trillion. So you can kind of put two to two together. Where is all of this money coming from, and how are they getting all of these funds to be able to prop up their dollar?
They're using their illegal cash flow from ransomware, etc., to essentially bolster the ruble.
Yes, to essentially bolster the ruble. Yes.
Let me ask you this. We've talked a bit about, we know that they have access to possibly shutting down our pipelines and corrupting our the flow of oil, or the flow of gasoline, we should say, from the refineries to the stations. What about the food supply chain, and specifically the vehicles we drive? You know, every vehicle we have now has computer chips in it. Most of them connect to satellites, for one reason or another, for updates. How susceptible are we to where one day we're going to go out and get in our car and it's not going to start? Is that a possibility?
So I won't talk so much about the cars just yet, but I do want to go back to the farm equipment. The way farming works now in America, it is all computerized. Right. When you get into one of these giant tractors, you link with a GPS coordinate and it drives the tractor. So when all of this information is pulled and downloaded and uploaded, a Russian asset or anyone really is able to access this information and make modifications and send attacks to these machines and make alterations. This can disrupt food supplies and different things. That, let's say, instead of 2 gallons of poison every yard, you make it 4 gallons of poison every yard.
Yeah.
Whoa. They can destroy entire crops and really disrupt the ecosystem if they really wanted to.
The same with food processing?
The same with food processing. Everything is becoming more accessible. That people want to be able to access their assets remotely and manage their assets. So when you talk about IT, I talked earlier about how there's a fundamental flaw in the way we do broader communications. Most of the time it's get the thing to work, we'll worry about security later, when it really should be security first. So a lot of times they say, okay, we can talk to the machine, let's get it to do the thing we want, and then they worry about, okay, how do we protect it from someone messing with our operation?
Well, let me ask you this, and Scott, you may have heard this if you've watched any of the press conferences out of the White House over the last couple of months. There has been messaging. There's been messaging regarding an upcoming food shortage. There's been a lot of messaging. Obviously, this has to do with a lot of the fertilizer that's produced in Russia and Europe being shut down in the supply chain there. But could this be something that they're knowing that this is going to be an issue and they're warning us ahead of time because of a cybersecurity attack on our food producers, on the farm system? Mitch, what are your thoughts on that?
So I believe that it is a real possibility that we could see a food shortage, not necessarily from these ransomware attacks, but from other interferences. But there is a lot of food that is produced, so I don't know how real of a threat it actually is. I do know that they do have access to all of these farm equipment, though.
We're talking about malware. We're also talking about, what is backdoor corruption?
So when you talk about backdoor, a lot of devices, IoT devices, farm equipment, cars, a lot of these type of equipment are produced in China. China pre-installs malware onto a lot of these devices into the initial code that you would not initially see. And then these are shipped out to different companies to put on their product, their OS, their application, whatever it may be. And then China would then sell that information to Russia or any other bad faith actors, and they would then be able to access these back doors onto these different devices, whether it be your phone, your Alexa, your Ring, your anything that can connect to the internet, your smart TV. They can stop you from watching Fox News if they so choose.
What about your, I mean, obviously you can get into your home Nest and security control systems, right?
Yes, they can get into your home Nest security system and control your entire environment. So let's say you go out on vacation, you post on Facebook that you are going out on vacation for 2 weeks. Someone with access to this can utilize that and crank up the heat in the middle of the summer, frying your whole system and leaving you out thousands and thousands of dollars.
Well, let's talk how, as a, we've heard there are a lot of things that are out of our control. We've got no control over shutting down pipelines, the food supply. We've got no control over the, if they want to mess with the farming equipment electronically through computers. We don't need control over that. But what can we control to keep them from coming in our house and turning my Nest up to 99 degrees and, frying our systems?
Very good password management using password managers such as LastPass and keeping everything up to date and current. Doing the system updates. Whenever you get that annoying notification on your phone that says update now, you should probably click update now, because more than likely they have found a security flaw that needs to be updated. Usually it's a little bit later, but it's good to be up to date with the current technology.
And how do you know you're getting that notification on your phone from the phone company, or is it a hacker?
More than likely, it's from the phone company, but yes, you are correct. It could be from the from China saying, "Here, update our malware onto."
What you're telling me is that they have a full range, a full arsenal of attack mode of attack weapons in their arsenal with regard to cyberspace warfare. They can affect pharma, the making of vaccines, for example, and the temperature that they need to be at. They can actually go into that computer system and cook the vaccine so they're useless.
Yes, they could. But I want to tell you there are remediation efforts that you can take to mitigate these effects. One is using a two-factor authentication. There's a Google Authenticate, and LastPass has a authenticator called YubiKey. You can purchase one for about $40. It's a little USB. Whenever you go into a computer, you just plug it in. And then when you want to sign into anywhere, it uses biometrics, and you can press your thumb. So unless if they have access to that information, which is really difficult, they cannot really mess with anything that you are doing. And
you're saying it's like a cyberspace bulletproof vest.
Yeah, kind of. So a lot of companies are actually moving away from the password. They are going passwordless, and they are actually using RSA tokens and physical devices that you carry on the person to mitigate a lot of these threats. Eliminate the user error and just have it as a central system.
We've been talking with cyberspace security guru, Mitch Keller, professor here in Houston, and also a cyberspace security expert. Mitch, we appreciate you joining us on the show tonight. A lot to think about, but it sounds to me like at least we just try to do what we can, and there are some steps that we can do to protect our home and our family in the short term.
Now, Todd, this news just broke, and I'm sure Mitch will appreciate it because it involves smart TVs in Russia. Putin was delivering his victory speech, and all the smart TVs in Russia posted anti-war information. Now, you've been following this, Mitch. Who is this? Is this anonymous again,
This
you
is
think?
most likely anonymous. They have been doing this since the beginning of the war. They have done this multiple times where they hack the Russian TV and broadcast pro-Ukraine sentiments.
Not only took down smart TVs, also took down YouTube, their YouTube version. The sign is you can't get any videos or upload any videos on the Russian version of YouTube. Also, their version of Google. They posted messages in different areas. I mean, those guys, if they find out who Anonymous is, they better change. They better watch what kind of underwear they're wearing because Putin's not going to be pleased.
No, not at all. I don't think he's pleased already.
Very interesting. At least score one for the good hackers, I would say. Anonymous, good job. Let us know. We'll get you on the show. All right, Mitch, thanks for joining us tonight. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much.
All right. Some disturbing things to unpack there, Scotty, but certainly something we should all be very mindful of. And that food shortage thing, I'm telling you, there's a lot more they know about this, and only time will tell. All right, now we're going to go on a road beyond and under the Pacific Ocean near Hawaii. Take a look at this. This is pretty darn cool. First read about this, and it's you're going to see in just a second. It looks like a cobblestone road. This is shots from researchers aboard the Nautilus, a submarine, which is doing some. There you go. There's your cobblestone road. Kind of Wizard of Oz-like formations highlight how these ocean explorations can shed light on processes that are normally hidden away under the waves. Follow the yellow brick road to a greater understanding of seabed geology, or as I've heard it being called on some radio shows, this is the roadway to Atlantis. The yellow brick road to Atlantis. Once again, on the floor of the Pacific Ocean near Hawaii. They're saying this is caused by natural stress, volcanic eruptions, bubbling under and more, but it sure is very interesting to look at. What do you think, Scotty?
Yeah. Oh, hey, a yellow brick road under the water.
Yellow brick road. Follow the yellow brick road. Hey, folks, follow us on Facebook and Twitter as the Road Beyond Podcast. We also have a new group on Facebook called the Road Beyond Podcast Fans. Follow us on TikTok now at Road Beyond Podcast. I'm on Instagram at Todd Duplantis65. And always subscribe to our YouTube channel, the Road Beyond Podcast, and we'll give you notifications when this show is posted. Scotty, been a great show. A lot going on this week.
Wait for next week. We got another one coming.
We'll have to see what happens next week. I'm hoping maybe some Bigfoot. We haven't had a Bigfoot show in quite some time.
We'll see.
We'll see. All right, folks, thanks for joining us tonight on the Road Beyond Podcast. We'll see you next week.